the first thing I was curious about was you've recently in a couple interviews talked about various injuries you've incurred over your career, and I'm just kind of curious how you're feeling these days physically and just how things have been going for you.
I feel as good as I can possibly feel as far as for what I've been through, if that makes any sense. I had major neck surgeries. I've had a pericardectomy, which is very, very rare thing to have. 30 years as a wrestler, 26 of those full time. So I've just finished doing 200 Hindu squats and 100 Hindu push-ups and walked a couple of miles. So for being 54 in a few days, I feel as good as I think I'm ever going to. I probably could feel a little bit better if I had, if I really put my mind to it as far as getting more work done on my body and all that kind of stuff, or doing extra bits of whatever. But I think I feel as good as I possibly can be, and for what I've done with my life. So I feel good.
Good, great. Hey, and happy early birthday. You got any special plans? You going to go do anything special for your birthday?
No, it's just another day now, isn't it? Really,
Yeah.
It goes by so quick. It really is that thing. All those old sayings you hear when you're younger, but time just flies by. I've been, it's May already. Me and my wife joke about it every year. We might as well just leave the Christmas decorations up, because they're up and then we take them down, and then it's Valentine's Day, my son's birthday, my birthday. The next thing, it's my wedding anniversary, my other son's birthday, my wife's birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And it comes around that quick. It just like flies by. I remember being 40, and it's like a blink of an eye away. And I've had all these things happen to me in between, and just all kinds of incredible things, but it's gone so quickly. And I talk to my dad every single week. I have done since I left home when I was 16 on a Sunday. And that's the first thing he says every week. And when I was younger, it used to be something he said. Now I totally get it. It's a shame, really, that I can't slow life down a bit, because I'm having such a blast at the moment. But it's gone. It's like 2 months of it gone, and I won't really catch up with it until one day when I'm not doing this, I don't think. And then I'll start to realise how incredible all this stuff that's going on at the moment.
Yeah, I totally understand. I'm going to be 40 in a little bit over a year, and time really does just start to move quicker once you start getting up there. Yeah. So you've been in AEW for a little bit now. I'm just kind of curious what the transition has been like for you, and what your overall thoughts have been on AEW since you've been there.
I've enjoyed it immensely. How many weeks am I in? I really don't even know how many weeks. It's just gone by so quickly, and if I actually take a step out of it for a second and look back and think, wow, I was fortunate enough to get brought into this company to be in a role, and that role worked out, and thankfully for the people, we're all involved in it, and not only in 2 months, which is nothing really, we've made a new star, and we haven't even scratched the surface of what we can do with this group, and it's just been great. And I love being around a lot of young talent that want to be wrestlers. I enjoy giving, because I was very fortunate when I was a teenager to get into this job and have the best wrestlers possible in Britain, and then Europe, and then different parts of the world, because they know I wasn't going anywhere, and I worked hard. That they gave me all their time and taught me a lot. And I'm quite happy I'll never force myself on anybody, but if anybody wants to come and work on wrestling, that's what I love to do. So I'm surrounded by people. So I feel bad that I haven't got enough time for the amount of people that are coming up to me. It's, I just want to start working on something with somebody. It that's it. That's the day gone. So there's like about and also spending a lot of time with Wheeler, and just it's just time and it's going by. But I'm really enjoying it. I love the fact that I can just go out and be, which took a bit of getting used to be honest, going out and just being me. And when I say me, there is no real me. There's whatever William Regal turns into, and that is influences from all kinds of wrestlers, all kinds of entertainers, a lot of old British stuff. I haven't got to, I can just, it's very similar to when I was Lord Steven Regal in WCW, where there was just, I never knew where I was going to go. I just go with stuff. There's things that just have become part of me that I don't have to think about, and I can just do them, and nobody's saying don't do that. And really, I didn't have that in the WWE. I was very fortunate there because Mr. McMahon trusted me with whatever he gave me, and so I had when I hear these stories about people, you know, having to do these different things, I was given ideas, and it was just go and do it. And I've always had the attitude of let's just make it work. So I've just gone at it and done it, and I had, you know, you hear these things of, I might offend a few people here, but you hear these things of, well, they have all these writers, scripts, all this stuff out. Well, if they do that, so you know what you're doing. But you can take that, well, as long as you earn the trust first, that they know that you can actually pull off what they need. But if you take that and make it your own and go and sit in the stands for an hour and like, how can I make this into something and use my own words? As long as you get that trust at the beginning, when you go there, you can go where you want with that stuff. There's learning how to react, or there's being an actor. I'm not an actor. I react to things. And it takes a long time to get to that. But fortunately, I had a lot of experience before I came here and failed miserably. You know, that was before I came to America even. You know, I say a lot of died on the backside 1,000 times trying different things. But once I came here, I sort of, you just learn to react to situations. And so whatever you've got, you can make it into something. Well, I've got that now where I can just go out and be William Regal, and whatever's on my mind or however the mood takes me, I just go out and I'm even sat there saying stuff and I'm thinking, where's that come from? It's like something that some old 50 years ago, and I happened to see it on a piece of film 30 years ago, and it just comes out of me. So I'm really enjoying that bit of it. So again, I've been fortunate that I've had a lot of that in my career, where I've had some great time where I could just go out and be me. There was never any real time when I wasn't. But you do, for any younger talent reading this, you have to earn that trust. With whatever company you're working for, you have to earn that trust first. So I'm having a blast with it.
Yeah. Now, I know you just said that you're not an actor, you react to things, but I know a lot of people who actually think that you would be a great actor. Have you ever considered trying to do anything like that? Maybe movies or TV? Has there ever been any offers presented to you?
I got offered a film once about a bare knuckle fighter from Britain called Lenny McLean, and this was 20-something years ago. And I said I didn't have. I just started. Well, I was probably a year into my second, which really is my whole WWE career, because I don't count the first one at all in '98. But this was going in 2000. This was maybe 2001. To dedicate I was just getting going in WWE and being the commissioner and having a lot of great, incredible run and a role there. It would have meant me going out of that. And so I said that I would play his father. I'd read the book, and his father was a horrible human being, which I thought I could pull off very well. And the guy said we could probably do this in a couple of weeks, your bits. but then they never got the funding for it. They actually, I haven't seen the film yet, but I know they got the funding for it about 3 or 4 years ago, but it was a different director who made it. Apart from that, nobody has, and the thing that's always puts me off a little bit about offering myself up for that, I could never, or I say I can't, I'm what I term a red light person. I can't do rehearsals. I'm scared to death. I fail miserably at trying to just go out and do me with not like the actual camera on me just filming. And so if somebody came up to me with the right role and knew me, and there's obviously people have seen me or know me, they came up to me with the right thing and said, right, you don't have to do a rehearsal. We trust you and we'll just make it work, because I'm very open to listening to that. You know, I'm not, they can just direct me and I'll do it. I would love to do something. But the thought of actually putting myself out there, because I know when I've run through rehearsals in WWE, and again, I used to get my own freedom, but I can't do it in the afternoons and stuff. I just can't. I just go out and just say my words, and it's Darren Matthews just saying words. It's not William Regal. I don't have it in me. So there's always been that thing of, I don't really want to try and act in. One day I hope that something would come my way where somebody would say, we've got a part for you, and you'd fit it, and then I can just go and do it. And yes, I would love to.
I know what movie you're talking about. It's called My Name is Lenny.
Yeah, and it was the original. I always remember his name. The original fella who got in touch with me was called. You can't forget this name, can you? Clinton Montague III, and he was the guy. He was a guy that bought the original script for the movie, and then it just didn't get any funding at the time. So this is 20 years ago now. So that was it, really. I've never had any offers for anything since. So there we go.
Wow. Well, let's circle back to the Blackpool Combat Club a little bit. Now, how did this come about? Was this something that, like, you proposed when you came in, or did Tony come to you, or Danielson come to you? How did this whole thing come together?
So, Bryan gave me a call about, it might have been this 3 weeks maybe before I actually debuted, and said, could you talk to Tony, please? Would you like to come in here? And we have this idea. And I was like, that sounds like a lot of fun. And then talked to Tony, and it all sounded like a lot of fun, and come in as talent, and again, just to be me and to be with Bryan, because we've got such a long history together. Then I started watching the show, because when I was let go by WWE, I checked out of wrestling, completely. And it might have only been 6 weeks, but when I say I checked out, because all I've ever done is do wrestling. And the only times I haven't done it is when I've been really, really ill. So it was, it's not my job anymore. Let me have a complete break from this and not think about it, except for stuff that I liked, which is watching old British wrestling with my son, who lives in England, and that's what he does now, but that's his story. He likes to keep it to himself, that he's not my son, because he wants to not, doesn't want anybody thinking he got anything because of me.
Sure.
But we watched some old British stuff and some old Japanese stuff, and that was it. But I was checked out. So I started watching the show, and then I saw Bryan mentioning there was stuff going on with him and John, which looked to me like they were going to be together. And then I spoke to Bryan again. He said, yes, this is the idea. So I'm like, thank you. Yeah, great. So I turn up and I just do my thing. That I didn't know what I was doing until about maybe 15 minutes before we actually did it. I got to the building at 7:15 or something that night, I was in a room. Finally, John and Bryan came in and said, "Right, here we go. This is it." And I'm like, "What? This is it? Yep, this is it. We're going out and having a match in a little bit. We'll see you then. You just come out and react." And that's exactly what we did. I just went out and reacted. And, you know, they gave me half an idea of what they want, where they wanted to go. The next thing about you know, I'm just sort of having because I don't feel like I'm in a position to say anything. I'm still not. I've mentioned a few things in the last few weeks, but I'm just like, what do you need? Point and click. Right, I'll just go out and do my bit and react, and let's see where it goes. So the name, the Blackpool Combat Club, it was John's idea. I was like, "You sure you want to call it that?" "Yeah, it sounds great." And then we have, I'm not going to give that away now, but there's I think it's somewhat obvious because of the origins of where I started and where I used to live. And so this thing started, and again, you may understand this more than me because it's going by so quick for me. I'm turning up and doing it, but it's still not really sinking in. It just seems to be working. So I'm going out doing my bit. They're doing a great job with their bit. Wheeler was mentioned that he came on board, and then we're where we're at as of this moment. And so that's how it's all worked out. And we've done some. We all get on together. We don't sort of, we just seem to work. Whatever it is, it just seems to click, which is a fantastic thing to have. Something else I've been very fortunate with. I've never been involved with anything really, or any group or tag team that I haven't clicked with, which is a great thing to have. And I seem to just be clicking with this group, and they get on together, and we all get on together, and it just clicks, and we sort of just go out and do it, and that's what's happening at the moment. And there's all kinds of bits of whatever going on with ideas, and we just stand around for a little bit, and what about this, what about that, and we really haven't put too much thought into it apart from going out and reacting to situations, because we're all, I don't know how Wheeler feels, but the three of us are just comfortable being us. And when you're comfortable in being who you are, you can go out and pull anything off, really, once you've done this a while. And we just all just seem to work as a unit well, and that's the way it's going.
Yeah, it's been great, and I know the reaction to it, at least on social media, where, a lot of my work takes place, so that's where I tend to see the reactions. People have loved it so far. I'm kind of curious, you got a massive reaction when you first showed up, and you came out to the ring and had that interaction with Danielson and Moxley.
I think people are happy I'm just not dead, right? I've figured that out.
No, I don't think it's that at all, William. I think, no.
Since I was about 40, I started to get reactions everywhere I went. Like, and doing my, if you think the majority of my career, I spent making people hate me. And then there was a time, once I turned over, I was probably 41 or 2. Didn't matter what I did, people just cheered it. And I'd go on these international tours, and I think they were just happy that I was still alive, because there's so many, unfortunately, I'm not making fun of this, but there's so many people that are of my age group that unfortunately are gone. And so that was like, I don't know if it was just me coping with that and finding it, well, maybe that's the reason I'm getting this kind of reaction, but it seems to have spilled over. They just seem to be happy that I'm around. So, that's my thought into it anyway.
I mean, here's my perspective. So, I've been around wrestling fans for a very long time, and it's one of those things where, and I don't know how you feel about this, but you always seem like somebody who never gives less than 100%, no matter what it is you're being asked to do. And after so long of doing that, you earn a certain amount of admiration and respect from wrestling fans. So because, you
earn trust. It's a weird thing, wrestling. It's the only, we're an act. We can get up our own backsides about what we are. You have to excuse that. It's my dog going mental about something. But we're an act. And like any act, you have to form a connection with your audience. Wrestling is the only act where people can hate you, but really they like you. And they like you because they trust you with their time. If they're willing to watch you and you're a good villain, they can trust you with their time. So in whatever form you're doing, you're just slowly building up trust with your audience. If they're willing to watch you and watch you get beaten up or watch you make them mad, you slowly build up. So I've been fortunate that I've had an incredible amount of TV time, and I've had an incredible amount of live event time. So it's 29 years now, over 29 years that I've been in America, slowly getting into, and if you don't know me, you've heard of me because of somebody else, or you might, how if you're 25 years old, how can you possibly know any of my stuff? I finished wrestling 8 years ago, and if you've woken up every minute of your day and you're a huge wrestling fan, you've still got to live, you've still got to study, you've still got to, do whatever else you do. There's only so much wrestling you can watch, and every day there's more, right? And so people, you're just there. My name's around, and Bryan has definitely helped that, and other people. Then I was really lucky to be a part of NXT, so I was a part of that when it was a younger generation getting around. So you just build up somewhat of, and it's really a myth. And there's nothing and nobody bigger than a myth, right? And most of the stuff that I heard about myself, that's nothing like that. But it's just these layers of this character that become a myth, and it's not trying to make it sound as in mythical. It's just it is. William Regal's just a myth of a person that's come through this wrestling business, and so people take whatever they want, because there's people who talk about, some people think I'm a wrestler, some people look at me as a clown, some people don't look at me as anything because they've only seen me doing certain roles. But because I've been around so long, and I've always, pretty much, you think about it, I've been on TV, even if not in a big role. I've been on TV for the last 29 years. So you just get into people's conscience, I think. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but I do also think that, at least from what I've seen, there is a certain amount of affection that people have for certain people in this business, and you're definitely one of them. Now, you had mentioned that, Bryan keeps your name relevant, and I'm kind of curious. I kind of want to go through each member here. What do you think it is that makes Bryan so special and connects him to the audience so much?
Talent, number one, ability, his ability, his likability, and at the same time, because you can like him so much, because he does come across as a very normal human being, but he can do incredible things. He's also, let me keep me on track here, but when I look at it from my point of view as if you're a good villain, a really, really good villain, you can, with the right person, with a flick of a switch, become a really good babyface. Roddy Piper was a master of that, because people trusted him so much to make him hate him that he could just switch that around and they would cheer him. That's just building up trust. So Bryan has built up a huge amount of ability with the younger generation of wrestling fans 22 years ago, going out there and making them pay attention and watching his wrestling. But he was also very entertaining with his wrestling, and people don't really class him as an entertainer, but you go watch him, he built up his reputation, but he was also good at heckling crowds and making it, he slowly built up his reputation. Then he went to the WWE, and I can say this because I know this, right? And most people don't. He was brought in at a time specifically because they wanted it, whatever happened with the NXT thing. Let's not even get into that. That's a different subject. But Bryan was recommended and brought back to WWE because they needed somebody who could go out and do longer wrestling matches with anybody. And that was, whether anybody knows that or not, that was one of the reasons why he got brought back. And then the NXT thing was a separate thing altogether. But it was a few people, me being one of them, putting our word on him. You're going to a longer format for Raw and different things. You need, and there was mention of the fact that we need somebody who can wrestle anybody and can work longer matches. And Bryan got brought in. Then he was put through all kinds of different things and entertaining, and people realised, no different than you said about me, that he would have a go at anything. Then he got very good at that and became a villain, and then got very good at that, and then got put with, the stuff with Kane, and so he's slowly building up all this credibility with his audience in one form or another, whether it's his wrestling, whether it's just his persona, whether it's his willingness to make them laugh, or his ability to make them laugh, or to chant, or it just keeps adding layers and layers to why you like Bryan and everything else on top. Maybe I'm the only one who sees this the way it really is, because I've had to talk to him sometimes. You can believe the myth or the nonsense that Bryan was held down. At one point, he said that to me. He said, I'm not doing anything. I said, Bryan, since you came back after, forget the NXT thing, but since you've come back into the WWE, I said, has there been more than about 2 weeks when you weren't a champion of some kind? And he went, well, yeah. Because if you go back and actually look, at this point when he was talking to me about stuff, I said, you've already been world champion. I said, I've never been world champion. I said, you're just, at the moment, you're going through just a normal phase where everybody goes through. I said, but you've been US champion, you've been, whatever it is, you've been some kind of doing something, or you've been, whether you know it or not, you're building up loads of trust with the audience because you're the one going out doing these 12 and 15-minute wrestling matches. You're getting the TV time. And it slowly builds up. So, and then his incredible ability on top of it. And then, these are long stories. I was sat once with a group of extras, and I won't mention who this person was, but I said that Bryan was working for WWE, and this person said to me, I said to him, I said, so what, I know him. I said, what do you think of yourself? He went, I'm the best wrestler in the world. And I said, not in this company, you're not. And he said, what do you mean? And I pointed, Bryan was actually sat on the opposite side of the arena. This is in the afternoon. I said, in this company, they tell everybody that whether you know it or not, you're getting told because of the way he wrestles, because of the way Michael Cole knocks him or says stuff about him. But if you actually look, they used to say that he was the best. Basically, they're telling the story that he's the best wrestler in the world. I said, he's the best wrestler in the world here. And this person said, I'm better than him. I said, not here, you're not. I said, because they're investing time telling the audience that he's the best wrestler in the world. And then when he goes out, he shows that he's the best wrestler in the world. I said to this certain person, I said, can you talk? And his exact words to me were, my wrestling speaks for itself, I don't need to talk. I went, good luck with your career, pal, because you're obviously so far up your backside that you're not looking at the big picture here, but you need to look more like, think about it like Bryan and go out and do whatever you need to do on top of the wrestling to get noticed. Now, if you want to buy into the myth about Bryan, you can buy into the fact that he was held down. If he was held down There's no way that, I don't care who he was, if Mr. McMahon wanted to hold him down, he wouldn't have been in the main event at WrestleMania. And you can buy into all the nonsense you want. He would not have let him be in that position. Right. So, that's like, people don't want to wear these things, but if you look at it, there's no way that would have happened. You can say he would would have been allowed in that position, but he was. And that's what Bryan's got. Bryan's got something incredibly special, that he knows how to connect with an audience. Whether Mr. McMahon told anybody that, and whether Mr. McMahon let the myth go out there that he didn't like him and whatever else, he must have liked him to a huge degree, else he wouldn't have put him in the main event at WrestleMania. Right?
Sure.
Right. So
absolutely.
Maybe I look at things very, very differently than a lot of other people. But I've also seen people organically get themselves over, and they haven't been in the main event at WrestleMania. Right? So there's a lot of things that go into Bryan's. That's what Bryan has. He has something, incredible skill level, a likability, an ability to connect with his audience in whatever form it is, which comes from a lot of hard work and a lot of him doing a lot of things before he got to the WWE, and now he's in AEW, and he's come in and, we've all known, I've known since, 2000 that he was going to be, incredible then. And even if you go back and look at some of the stuff from Memphis that we were doing at that time, there's videos of him going around with a mask on doing like pretty entertaining promos and stuff. And people used to say, oh, he can't do promos. They're not really watching. They're not looking at somebody just figuring this stuff out. But eventually it became where he was, people have these ideas that he couldn't do this or he couldn't do that. He could always do that. And then he just got to expand on it. And the stuff with Kane is a perfect example of it. But it's all connecting, slowly connecting, and adding a layer and another layer to why the audience likes you. So I know that's a long answer for Bryan, but that's why Bryan is Bryan.
No, that's great. So kind of what do you think about Moxley now? Like I would say he has a slightly different connection to the crowd than Bryan. What do you think it is about Moxley that draws people in?
John and Bryan do have a different connection with the crowd, but it's the same thing. John connects with the crowd.
It's for the same reasons?
It's the same reasons, it's just in different ways. John is he has a mystique about him. There's something that he just connects. He connected before he was ever in the WWE with the audience he was with. The first time I saw him do a promo, he connected with me, and I'm a hard sell on promos. When I saw him live do one, I've told that story recently, so I don't need to go over that again, but I saw him do a promo. I asked for him to do a promo in front of myself and Triple H, and he just left everybody with their mouths wide open in the building in 1 minute. And then he goes out there and he does his thing as a wrestler, and he knows how to connect with his wrestling. So it's the same things. It's the exact same things. It's just he does it his way. And we could go through anybody who connects with the wrestler. Anything that I've just said for either one of these gentlemen, you could say for anybody who connects with wrestling. It does, and sometimes it's skill, sometimes it's talking ability, sometimes it's just likability. It doesn't matter, because some people can do the exact opposite of everything that's right and they connect. But really, that's how anybody connects, as any kind, not just wrestlers, as any kind of anybody that connects with an audience. That's what it is. It's just all these little things that add up to whatever it is that makes people want to watch you.
Sure. Now, with Wheeler Yuta, do you see anything different in him than you do in the other two? He's a very young guy. I know he's been in the business for about 7 years, but he's still in his 20s. So what do you think it is that makes him fit so well within the group?
his ability, one, and his, again, likability. Whatever it was, whatever it is, people were chanting his name before he was any part of this group, right? There's no sort of, I don't need to try and think about why. I don't worry why, or not worry, but I don't try to think why. I just go, good, he's connected with his audience somehow. And good, he's got a lot of wrestling skills. Right? Because you'll have other people try and go, well, he's this or is that. I don't, it's just wasted headspace to me. Why these intangibles? He was connecting already in the group that he was with before. People were chanting his name when he was in the ring. Why try and put that's for other people to do. I don't waste my time with that because now I can just go, right, he's already at this level. Let's help him with this other stuff. You know, anything he wants to know now, what do you need to know? Because he's already somehow connected with his audience. And going into this, does that make sense? It's just...
It does. No, absolutely.
He's connected. And so let somebody else break that down. The exact same thing as I've just said for Bryan and for John. Wheeler's figured his bit out in the short time that he's been getting noticed. I noticed him, you know, a couple of years ago, and he had a tryout for WWE, and he would have been somebody. Daniel Garcia's the same. Would have been somebody that I would have hired, but things changed. I know exactly how I was feeling at the time when it was my job. I'll leave them out there a little bit longer because there's a lot of people here at the moment, and just to because I always think the people who have gone out their way, which is a lot of young talent, right? But a lot of talent that go out their way and are gonna, they're not gonna quit. They're not gonna stop. They're gonna go and do as much work as they can and find every avenue they can to get better at this. They're better off being out there in the world and doing that because they're gonna have far more experience. Whether it's good or bad experience, you should look at experience as good. You can look at, that it's a key to learning this is not to go, oh, this is a lot of rubbish. If you go, okay, what can I learn from this? And any of these fellas, whether they know that or not, have had to do this at some point. There may be times when they may be verbally saying, oh, this, I don't like this, but they've learned from it and they've moved on because otherwise they would have stopped doing it. Right? Does that make sense? If it was that bad at the time, they would have quit. So somehow it's driven them on to keep going. So I would have left them out there for, well, it's depending. It's depending what my orders at the time were. You know, if it was up to me, I'd have had to weigh the situation up. Because of AEW, I would have gone, maybe, we should take them. But unfortunately, it didn't get round to that point because things started to change where I was. So, but Wheeler and Daniel were two people that I was very interested in. They caught my attention in a time. Think about this. Anybody who's caught anybody's attention in the last 2.5 years and got to a point where Wheeler's got to and got to a point where Daniel's got to have done better than all of us. Because they've had to get noticed in a time when there was hardly any wrestling going on. That's pretty astounding. What these young fellas, anybody who's come along, who's got noticed, and in the last couple of years, or somehow made a name for themselves and getting people after them, they've done far more than I ever did, or Bryan had to do, or John had to do, because we were working under full conditions. Everybody's after any of these young talent in the last couple of years, how they've got any kind of notoriety is incredible. Because there's been hardly any shows on until, less than a year ago. They've somehow got people to pay attention to them. They want to hold on to that because that is something really special. Whatever they did, they want to try and figure that out to help everybody, help me. Because, so I can pass that on to people. I mean, they got noticed in a time when none of us have lived through a time like the last few years, especially the first year and a half. Nobody knew what was going on. They somehow got
Yeah.
themselves noticed and got themselves to not only they got themselves to an NXT tryout, and they got themselves noticed by AEW, and they got themselves noticed by New Japan. They've topped all of us. So good for them. And anybody else who's also done that in that time, like any of these young talent, hold on to that, because you've all achieved greatness by doing that. Somehow, whatever you've done, the work you've done, you've achieved something really special. That's not just going on here. There's like a new group of people coming out of Australia, and there's people coming out of Europe and England, and it's like there's people that are getting on people's radar. Good for them.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time the past few years. The pandemic definitely changed things for a lot of people. So it has been interesting to see what kind of wrestlers have gotten over. And another guy who's gotten himself over in the past few years is Danhausen. And there was a clip circulating recently of you and Danhausen having a little interaction in the ring. And it got me thinking about something. Comedy and pro wrestling have a very interesting relationship, and you've done sort of both sides. You've played very serious characters, and you've played very funny characters. I'm kind of curious what you think the role of comedy is in pro wrestling. I know that's kind of a weird question, but like, how do you see its relationship to the rest of the business, and how important is it?
Wrestling, there's always been comedy in wrestling, whether anybody wants to admit it or not. There's always been characters and not out and out comedy wrestlers, but there's been people that just unusual looking, or it's wrestling is at its core a show sport, but there's always been character players in that. And so as long as it's done well, there's nothing worse than bad comedy in wrestling, right? And there's a lot of bad comedy in wrestling. But if it's done well and it connects, somehow Danhausen has connected with his audience. I had a chat and I asked him, I just sat with him about a month ago, and he told myself and Jim Ross, we were just sat eating, and I just said, look, what's the story, Morning Glory? How did you get to it? Because it fascinates me how people get to where they get to. Because I know my journey. I know a lot of people's journey because I've been a part of it for so long. How did you get to it? Because I'm all for it, right? I could be one of that's another thing I think why I'm still around, because I'm an old wrestler, but I'm not an old wrestler with a mindset of back in the day, or the start believing they all start believing it was all serious and real when they get to a certain age, I think. So there's a great thing that I always think of when stuff like this comes up. Tony Sinclair, who was an incredible wrestler, an English wrestler, he used to say, I can't wait till I get old enough where I can start telling people that cartwheels were real. Because we've always done humorous things in wrestling. I grew up with British wrestling, but there was incredible comedy wrestlers, incredible. Les Kelly and Catweasel. Catweasel, if you go back and watch Catweasel, if you actually look at him, it was ridiculous, but he was so over. And if you had the right person on with him who would sell his comedy, he was as over as anybody, right? People loved him. And at the same time, he could wrestle a good villain and get the most sympathy of anybody. And he was you've got to see him his real name was Gary Cooper, like the movie star. And there was a famous TV show on in Britain when I was a child called Catweasel, which was about a wizard. And he resembled this guy. So then that was the character. But he did a comedy match. Some of the comedy was him putting a body scissors and him sticking his false teeth out onto the chest of the person doing it. His false teeth used to come out, right? And this is a guy that was on TV, nobody was on regularly in England. I mean, the most anybody was ever on was 6 times in a year. They kept it, people just see what they see now, but it was kept, the announcers kept you alive by mentioning your name. But they didn't overexpose people because it was only on once a week. But, in my day it was Catweasel. There was another Kevin Keneally, Pedro the Gypsy. And I was around all these fellas. The original person whose house I lived at when I left home was a guy called Steve Peacock. And he had been there's a great match of him and Catweasel on YouTube. Peacock was comfortable with himself and was a villain and would fall on his backside for anybody. So when I met him, he took all the best bits because he'd wrestled all these other comedy wrestlers. He took all the best bits of it. But he did it differently. He turned it round on himself, where he was the butt of all the jokes. Whereas usually, if you're wrestling a comedy wrestler, you have to be on with somebody who's comfortable and happy to be the butt of the joke. Otherwise, it doesn't work, right? So, comedy's always been a part of wrestling. So, and I know it's the same in England. In America. I know it's the same in Japan. It's you have these ideas, and it's the same in Mexico, with Porky and different people. It's always been a part of it. It's just whether it's done well and whether you've got the right opponent who's willing to put that stuff over. Well, with Danhausen, he's figured out whatever he's got into the dance. Good for him. I'm not going to go, well, this fella looks like this. No, I'm going, good for you, lad. I'm happy for him. Right? So I'm more than happy to put his stuff over. That was one of my jobs in WWE because I'm very comfortable with myself. I was either, if you look at it, I was put on with a lot of people to make their stuff look funny or to put their stuff over. And I'm willing to do it because I'm not trying to act like a tough guy. Right? I can switch on a split second. I can make people hate me. I'm very good at it. But I can also make them laugh at me or be the butt of the joke. And then I will use that and turn that round in a second and then put somebody down and then use that humiliation to get heat on that person and get heat with the crowd because I'm very comfortable with myself. I don't think I'm a tough guy. I don't act like one. I know people seem to think I'm something, but I don't think I am. I don't act like one, but I'm very comfortable with myself. So, I can tell these stories now because there's nothing bad about in what I'm saying about this, but Mr. McMahon brought me into his office once to work with Vito in a dress. And he said, and he used to always call me Darren, can you work with this fella? Because I've given this character and nobody else will be able to get it over than you can. And so if you go back and watch, it was me that was supposedly this tough guy getting, my head stuck up his dress, selling it for him, because if he was on with anybody else, it wasn't working as well. I did the same a lot with Santino and then, make sure his stuff worked well and helped him with a lot of stuff. And he'll tell you this, that you've got to have the right people on with you to put the stuff over. So Danhausen is just another person. I go out there, I'm happy to put his stuff over because I know I can get it back if I need it. We didn't need to in whatever we were doing. But I'll put it over and I'll make it, because that's my job. I'm a professional and my job is to outsell the other person I'm on with. Because if I do that and they do that for me, then it works. If you're going out there with the wrong attitude, that's it, people just live in these things and they don't actually analyse stuff. If you work for New Japan, and I have, and I worked there when it was, everybody looks back and like everybody was killing each other days. When you were on the road in live events, there was a lot of humorous stuff going on, right? They have Yano now that does this stuff, and it's always been there. And if Danhausen's the guy doing the comedy at the moment, I'm happy to put it over.
That's great. No, that video clip was amazing, and I know a lot of people who got a lot of enjoyment out of seeing the two of you interact. I do want to switch gears here really quick. I don't want to take up all day of your time. You've been very generous here, but you're getting into the podcast game here soon. Talk to me about that. What can we expect to see from this show, and what are you looking forward to with it?
Okay, so I did the first one on Sunday, and it seemed to work well. This may be the shortest run podcast in history, because I've set out with which I talked to Conrad Thompson when he asked me about it, because I was going to do this. I was asked to do this before I talked to AEW. I was just looking to take a year off, and okay, I can do that. Try it anyway, but I'm not going to be like anybody else. I'm not going to knock anybody. I'm not going to, just not going to say anything. But I've got nothing. I have had a completely and utterly charmed life in this industry. When people moan and whine about this job, whether this offends them or not, then quit and go and do something else. Because I was down to be like my dad and like my granddad and like all my family. I was down to be a bricklayer. And I would have spent my entire working week, 5.5 days a week, staring at a row of bricks and be crippled up and have hands in the shape of a brick and bad backs and knees and necks and just look at a row of bricks. And that's not because my father's the greatest man in the world as far as I'm concerned. But that's what my family did. Nobody put a gun to my head to be a professional wrestler. I chose to be it. And if I knew from early on that this is what it was, and I know all the pitfalls, and I was told that, and told all this. So every day has been like, yeah, do you have the odd whine about stuff? Yes. But it takes me 2 seconds to go, you chose this. If you don't like it, go and do something else. Because you could be working down a coal mine, or you could be laying bricks, or in most cases now, you could be sat in, if you've spent whatever amount of years in college, you could be sat in a cubicle, right? And if I'd have been born 300 years ago, I'd have probably wanted to be a pirate. I knew from being a little kid, I knew going to building sites with my dad, I'm not cut out for this game. I don't want to do this. I want to do something different. And wrestling was the thing that I was used to watch from my earliest memories. I want to do that, or I want to be a clown or a comedian. And I've been fortunate enough to do both. I've had a charmed life out of this business. When you hear me talking about things that have happened, it's nothing. It's not me looking for sympathy or pity or moaning about it. It's just part of the job. After the promoter that I started working for, Bobby Barron, he knew that I wasn't going anywhere. Let's put it that way. And I was 15, because I kept going back weekend after weekend. He said to me, always remember, you come in, because there was no money in Britain, and I didn't think I'd get any further than working on a carnival. I was happy. I thought, I didn't think I was going to be any good as a wrestler, but I could be a wrestler on the carnival. I thought, I'll just work here for 20 years or 30 years, and then I'll try and get some other form of job. Well, 20 years because that's what they used to say, 20 years. And he said to me, you're going to come in this job with nothing, because there was no money. It was just enough, you just made a living. You're going to come in this job with nothing. You're going to leave it with nothing. You're going to be crippled up. And always remember, it's a completely crooked business. Are you still in? And I went, yes, please. Because that's what I wanted to do. And so that's the way this job's been for me. So my podcast is nothing going to be knocking anybody. So I don't know how long it's going to last. I'm not going to be doing stuff that other people don't do, that other people do. I'm not going to become this. You're going to hear my experiences, my thoughts, but there'll be no knocking, because I've got nothing to knock. Right? People ask me, well, you've just been let go from WWE. Well, yeah, I had a job there for 21 years. What have I got to say bad about WWE? And any of these horror stories that I hear about, I didn't have any of them. I had an incredible run on the main roster with the understanding that I walked in, I don't count the first time I was there because I can't remember it, and that's on me. Anything in this job that hasn't gone right for me is my fault. If you look at it like I'm doing a job that I want to do, anything that hasn't worked out for me has been my fault, or part of the job, which is getting injured. If you don't think you're gonna, I used to have this talk with people all the time. All the extras anybody that's ever come as an extra, anybody who's come to NXT, they can tell you that I've told them this. If you think you're gonna, know what you're getting into, because once you're a pro wrestler, this is a lifestyle. It's not a job, right? And I used to tell people there's nothing wrong with what you should do is use wrestling. Don't let it use you. There's nothing wrong with just wrestling on weekends in your local shows. If you want to just enjoy wrestling, because once you start this, you've got to come in that you know that you're going to be traveling. If you don't like traveling, don't do it. If it's on a plane, it's too hard for you, don't do it. If driving's too hard for you, don't do it. If you think you're going to be wrapped up in cotton wool, definitely the wrong job to do. If you think you're going to get 8 hours sleep a night, definitely the wrong job. You're not going to do it. If like all these things, know what you're getting yourself into. Because I hear all these people whining and moaning and complaining about the job. Then don't do it. Don't do something else. Let somebody who wants to do it. Right? So I have a different outlook on this job. I have had a charmed life. I have not had to do, apart from the occasional nightclub I worked in and different things when I was a teenager and openly, admittedly, bought and sold a few stolen goods when I was younger. Right? That was just the extra stuff because I've been married since I was 18 and I needed to provide for my family. This job has given me nothing but a charmed life. I've had a charmed life out of this. So what have I got to knock? So that is what my podcast is going to be, a very different outlook on a lot of this than a lot of other people that turn into whatever they turn into because they have to get people listen. Nobody might care. It might last 2 weeks and then nobody might want to listen to it again. But that's what I'm going to be doing, and it's just going to be my views on whatever it is, and but with a view of that. So don't start thinking I'm going to start knocking stuff or it's just not going to happen. It'll be my experiences, which I've got a hell of. That's another thing. I've got a hell of a lot of life, right? I didn't just work in a certain time. I've worked all over the world. If I'd have finished wrestling at 24, I'd have had an incredible career. I came to America at 24. I'd had an incredible career by then. Like more than most people could ever imagine. In the last 4 years of my 20 to 24, before I came to America, I went to 19 countries and saw things that you could never imagine and lived through and had an incredible life. So everything after that, all that was a bonus because I didn't think I'd get further than the carnival, right? That it's all been a bonus for me. So it's going to be a very different outlook on what people are. If you're expecting gossip, nonsense, sorry, I really said something there, but BS, go listen to somebody else because you're not going to get that from me.
Well, hey, I'm really looking forward to it, and I think there's a lot of people who are looking forward to it, and hearing a positive podcast is definitely something I think a lot of wrestling fans will enjoy. So before I let you go,
from you as well, it might ruin a few things for people because they want to live in this world of whatever this is. And I'm, do you know what? Another thing, why I've stayed around so long, I think, because I've never, you hear that term, the wrestling bubble. I've never been inside it. I have to dip my toe into it or get into it sometimes, but I've always been, because of the grounding that I had and the wrestlers that I was around, looking at it, being a grown man, stood outside of it, looking into it, right, what we got to do? Okay, let's do this. Let me do this. Let me sort this out. And a lot of people in that don't like, instead of going, and we've talked about it today, like me having to tell Daniel Bryan once, you do realise that there's only been about 2 weeks in your entire run here that you haven't been a champion of some type or involved in something. Oh, yeah, you're right. 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 Yeah. And he had to do that for me once. There was one time when I was whatever was going on with my health, I was having to wrestle somebody. I won't say who, but even I couldn't get a decent match out of this fella. And after about a month, he wasn't working for WWE at the time. I called Bryan, I called him one night and I was going, I actually he had to talk me off a bit of a ledge that night because I was ready for, like, this is maybe it. Because I knew I was getting towards 40 then or whatever, and I thought, like, my body's beat up. I didn't know how bad it been. And I'm not complaining about it, but he had to talk me off the same thing once. It was one conversation that, like, I was feeling a bit sorry for myself, and he talked me out of it one night. Because I was struggling with this one fella, and he wasn't, like, didn't matter what I did, every trick in the book I knew, I still couldn't get him to understand why he should be doing this or why he shouldn't be doing that, or, what nothing, and that, I prided myself on being able to get through a match with anybody. I couldn't get a decent match out of this fella, and it was bothering me. So I've gone through all these things, but I've also been able to, most of the time, because of experience, I can help people get through their, whatever they have their days like I had that particular day. And it's because I've either seen it, I've either done it myself, I've either failed miserably at it, I've seen it succeed, or I've been around the best people in the world. That's another thing. How fortunate have I been to being around all these incredible people that have been around my whole life? Whatever they may be in life, I've seen these great success stories, and I've been stood across the ring from them, and I've watched how they get to where they get to, so I can help people with that. I can tell them, okay, well, don't do this, and certainly don't do a lot of the things I did when I was younger, and maybe try this and maybe try that, or if I can't help you with this, go and talk to that person. He might be able to help you. She might be able to help you. They're better at this than I am, so go and talk to them. Or maybe I can put you in contact with this person because they might be able to help you. So that's another thing that has got me through this. So we've talked a lot, but there we go. That's what my podcast is going to be. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, then it's just another day. And let's say I enjoyed doing the first one. And what we're starting off on topic, as you've probably figured out listening to me, because I'm not into all I don't live in the wrestling world kind of thing. I am very much a part of it, but I'm also out of it. We got to about the first question, and then we went off in 50 different other topics. And so I said, well, whatever you have, we've just done 2 hours, and it's gone by, because we keep that for next week, because that will hopefully prolong this podcast. Because there's so many different topics once I start talking, then there's all these other things from different places and stuff come up, you see. So, yeah, so that's going to be what I'm going to be doing.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, and I think it's going to do well. One of the things that I like to wrap up interviews with, to kind of give readers and fans a little bit of a view inside of the non-wrestling personality, is a movie review. So is there any movies that you've seen recently, whether it's something current or not, that you'd like to talk about?
That I've seen recently, definitely not. Actually, does it have to be a movie?
Not really. I mean, what is it, like a TV show or a documentary or something? Yeah. What'd you watch?
Okay. So I've just seen a show called The Outlaws by Stephen Merchant, which is on Prime. And it's just an incredible look at the human condition. I'm not going to say any more because everybody needs to take it how they take it. It's very incredibly well written, but it just shows how we're all part of this world, but we all see things from a very different way. And you have no idea what situations you can be put in, and it gives you an incredible view of a group of people that are put together that have all ended up in this particular at this particular time, and they're all having to work together, but they're all got different stories and how they end up figuring it out or coping with and dealing with life. And I think there's so many incredible it's depending how you look at this, or if you have it the kind of open mind that I have about different things that are going on with society, and it seems to be and have gone on with society forever. And because the world drives me insane. I just don't get why we just haven't figured this all out and just get on with each other. I have a very simplistic view of this world, right? About I can't. It drives me up the wall that everybody's still fighting and arguing and terrible things going on in the world. We've had God knows how many years to figure it all out, and it's still the same and still people. Well, this is just shows it's somewhat of a how, you know, like nobody can help where you're born, your circumstances. Certain things change the world for you instantly. Certain things that you put, everything that's sort of going on. I think they've done a great job in this series of showing as much of the human condition as possible, and really how you can figure it out to a degree. So that's what I would. The other thing is, as a movie review, I don't know. Nobody's going to watch this, but it's another great thing of the human condition is a movie called No Surrender, and it's written by an author from Liverpool in England called Alan Bleasdale, who writes incredible, thought-provoking stuff. It's on YouTube. Again, it's funny. I don't know if people would understand it here, but it's how people. It shows how circumstances, life, the human condition, or everything that needs to be shown in one movie, and it's also funny. I don't know if it would translate though, because it's unless you grew up in Britain and when there was a time when we were nothing to do with the normal people of Britain, but the British government was at war with Ireland and different things going on. Perhaps it wouldn't have the same effect on you that it did me when I watched it. And then there's another great movie that I would say again is all about the human condition called Brassed Off. Ewan McGregor's in that, and that is another incredible look at how life, what the world is really all about, and if you want to look at it with an open mind and how the world has to cope and can learn to cope, and how terrible situations and whatever your world is that you have to deal with, and that's it is another great movie.
Well, hey, people usually come away from these interviews with one recommendation, so now they have three. So I really appreciate that. That's great. And I'm a huge Stephen Merchant fan, so I'm definitely going to go check out this Outlaws show that you mentioned.
What's a good selling point for people in America is Christopher Walken's in it.
Yeah, I was just looking up the cast, and I saw his name, so that interested me as well.
Yeah, but it's a really well-written. It is incredibly well put together and thoughtful. If you're looking at it like that and not just looking at it for a few laughs.
Yeah, and Stephen Merchant's mostly known as a comedy guy, so I'm kind of curious to see how he handles a crime drama.
Right. So it's very good.
Awesome. Well, hey, again, I really appreciate you being so generous with your time. I really looked forward to talking to you. I've wanted to talk to you for years, and this has been a big honor for me, so I really appreciate it.
Okay.